For over 65 episodes, Kiyaya and Daniel have been here sharing great literature for kids and adolescents. It's time to sit back, relax, and get cozy, because it's story time with Kiyaya and Daniel. Maniac Tuesdays are back, and you've got me and Kiyaya. We're excited for sharing the next few chapters of Jerry Spinelli's Newberry Award-winning MANIAC MAGEE. It's all starting now on Let's Get Cozy, because it's story time with Kiyaya and Daniel.
Hi, my name is Donnell Carter, certified personal trainer through National Academy of Sports Medicine, and certified nutrition coach through Precision Nutrition. I'm here today to talk to you about online personal training, the future of personal training right on your phone. We start the week with an overview and progress reports. Following that, we have our calendar, day 3, 4, 5 different workouts. Further in depth, we see exactly what we're doing for the day. Find out more information, contact me.
Stories are such an important part of our lives. Join my friend Kiyaya and I for Get Cozy, because it's story time with Kiyaya and Daniel, where we share some of the greatest picture books and chapters from children's and young adult literature to inspire you to keep embedding literacy into your days. Chapter 39. During the night, March doubled back and grabbed April by the scruff of the neck and flung it another week or two down the road. When Maniac slipped silently from the house at dawn, the only way he'd ever managed to get away, March pounced with cold and nasty paws. But Maniac wasn't minding. The reunion had been ecstatic and tearful and non-stop happy. And inside, he was pure July. He was half a block up Sycamore before he stopped tiptoeing. Minutes later, he crossed Hector. The streets were dry. An occasional scrap of chewed rawhide was all that remained of the worms. Hours later, Russell and Piper spotted him 3 blocks off. "Maniac, you're alive! We thought they got you! We thought they slit your throat! We thought they strangled you and pulled your tongue out! We thought they chopped your head off and boiled you! Yeah, boiled you! And drunk your blood! Yeah, and drunk your brains! You don't drink brains, you moron meathead! Yeah, you do. Brains like milkshakes, like Dairy Queen. You can drink them with a straw. You can hear them sloshing if you shake your head hard enough. Listen. Hey, get off my head! Hey, help! They were off and running. Maniac couldn't help laughing. In spite of their twisted, ludicrous impressions of EastEnders, the concern and the tears in their eyes had been genuine. They had really missed him. They had really been afraid for him. 2 houses away, he could hear the thump, almost feel it, and Father George McNabb's voice, "Lay him down easy! I said easy!" Followed by son John, "This easy enough?" Thump. Followed by a string of curses from George McNabb that fried the cold morning like an egg. The living room was hazy with dust. The back end of the dining room, they were bringing in the cinder blocks. George and John and a handful of cobras lugging and grunting them in from the backyard and dumping them onto the floor. Thump! Thump! "Hey, kid!" George McNabb was pointing through the haze. 3 months that he still didn't know his tenant's name. "Get your lily hide over here and start lugging these." Maniac waved later. "Gotta go." He shut the door and headed up the street. So they were really doing it. He had heard them planning it for weeks, making drawings, buying or stealing cement, trowels, a level, a pillbox, they called it. Once it was done, they'd be ready. Let the revolt begin. Let the rebels, as they called the EastEnders, come. Let them bust through the newly installed bars over the plywood on the windows. Let them bust through the sealed door. they'll find themselves staring down the barrel of a little surprise. They squabbled over what the surprise should be. Uzi? AK-47? Bazooka? Why? Maniac had asked Giant John one day. Why what? Why are you doing all of this? To get ready. What else? Well, what do you think's going to happen? What's going to happen? Giant John swatted a squad of roaches from the kitchen table and sat down. What's going to happen is, one of these days, they're going to revolt. Who says? Who cares who says? Do you think they're going to make an announcement? Maniac tried to picture Amanda and Hester and Lester and Bow Wow storming the barricades. When's this supposed to happen? John shrugged. You never know. Maybe this summer. He jumped up, grabbed a beer from the fridge, flipped it open. They like to revolt in the summer. Makes them itchy. They like to overrun the cities. This time, we'll be ready. And he told Maniac what he often imagined lying in bed. The blacks sweeping across Hector one steaming summer night. Torches, chains, blades, guns, war crimes, marauding, looting, overrunning the West End. Climbing in through smashed windows, doors, looking for whites, bloodthirsty for whites. Like Indians in the old days. Indians on a raid. That's what they are, Giant John nodded thoughtfully. Today's Indians. The cockroach strolling up his pant leg wasn't the only thing making Maniac feel crawly. He shook off the roach. He moved to the center of the kitchen to surround himself with as much space as possible. But other people, he said, I don't hear them talking about revolts. Nobody else wants to make a pillbox. Giant John tilted the last of the beer into his mouth. Maybe when you do, he grinned, they will. That had been weeks before, and now the pillbox was underway. No longer an idea in the backyard, but a reality in the dining room. Now there was no room that Maniac could stand in the middle of and feel clean. Now there was something else in that house, and it smelled worse than garbage and turds. Chapter 40. He ran far that day, away from the town, letting the wind wash him. When he returned to the West End, he heard in the distance Mrs. Pickwell whistling her children to dinner, though he had heard the whistle many times before. He had not answered it since his first day in town. Now he felt, as he had that day, that it was meant for him. This time, of course, there was a difference. He was no stranger. He was Maniac Magee, the kid who would walk barefoot through the dump near their house. The Pickwell kids cheered when he showed up and treated him like a legend in the flesh. Mrs. Pickwell did better. She treated him like a member of the family, as if she would have been surprised if he hadn't come on the whistle. Nor was Maniac the only visitor for dinner. Mr. Pickwell brought home a down-and-out shoe salesman in sore need of sympathy and a good meal. As Maniac ate and talked and laughed his way through dinner, he couldn't help thinking of the Beals. How alike the two families were, friendly, giving, accepting. So easily he could picture the Beals' brown faces around this dinner table, and the little Pickwell kids' white bodies in the bathtub at 728 Sycamore. Whoever had made Hector Street a barrier, it was surely not these people. Fortified by his good time at the Pickwells, Maniac returned to the McNabbs. After the East End scare, Russell and Piper no longer demanded stunts of him in return for attending school. On the one hand, this was a relief to Maniac. On the other hand, it left him with less influence over them. He could always extort a day or two in class from them with the free weekly pizza. Beyond that, he goaded them toward the school any way he could. He organized a marbles tournament that could take place only in the schoolyard during recess. He tried reading to them as he had to Hester and Lester and to Grayson, but they paid as much attention as the roaches. He took them to the library, then scrapped that idea after their shenanigans left the librarian blubbering and blue-faced. Then May arrived with its warm weather and blew away what little power he had left. The boys began to dream of travel. Wood appeared in the backyard. They were building a raft. Gonna sail down the river to the ocean, they said. One day he heard frenzied horn honking and screaming. He turned to see an ancient, rusty, gas hog convertible rolling by, with Russell behind the wheel and Piper jumping up and down and shrieking in the back seat. By the time Maniac caught up with them, they were gone, and the car was shuddering against a telephone pole. Another time he had to run them down and haul them back to Dorsey's grocery, where he made them empty their bulging pockets of the 50 bubble gums they had stolen. It was a maddening, chaotic time for Maniac. Running in the mornings and reading in the afternoons gave him just enough stability to endure the zany nights at the McNabbs. When he asked himself why he didn't just drop them, the answer was never clear. It wasn't so much that he wanted to stay as that he couldn't go. In some vague way, to abandon the McNabb boys would be to abandon something in himself. He couldn't shake the suspicion that deep inside, Russell and Piper McNabb, in the prayer-dark seed of their kidleyhoods, they were identical to Hester and Lester Beale, but they were spoiling, rotting from the outside in, like a pair of peaches in the sun. Soon, unless somebody did something, the rot would reach the pit. And yet he held back. Oh, he prodded and persuaded and inspired and bribed the boys to do right, but he never forced them, never commanded, never shouted, because to do so would be parental, and he was not ready for that. How could he act as a father to these boys when he himself ached to be somebody's son? But then one day the boys had gone too far. He found them playing with the old glove Grayson had given him for Christmas. As if that weren't bad enough, they were using it as a football, punting it back and forth. Maniac exploded. He popped off for a good 10 minutes, got it all out. This was the last straw, he told them. From now on, it was going to be different. There's going to be no more Mr. Nice Guy. When I say jump, you say how high. Got it? They got it. For the first times in their lives, the boys were speechless. Speechless as they did their homework that night. Speechless as they went to bed at 9 o'clock. Speechless as they went off to school the next morning. The peace lasted 3 days. Shock accounted for the first day. The second and third days were a new game called Obedience, or Being Good. When the game lost its appeal, Maniac lost his power. He told them to sit, they stood. He told them to stand, they sat. Instead of going to school, they worked on their raft. Instead of doing homework, they played war in the pillbox. They brought their plastic weapons down from the hole and stationed themselves at the small gunnery slots in the cinder block wall and blasted away at anyone moving through the house, not to mention imaginary rebels streaming through the door and over the windowsills. "Stop!" Maniac finally yelled, and snatched the 2 red gun barrels protruding from the slots. In a moment, 2 more barrels appeared. "Stop!" he commanded. "Ain't shooting you," Russell whined. "We're shooting them rebels. Bam, 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 pow, got one, pow, bam, got another, bam, bam. I said stop." Maniac grabbed the guns. He threw them on the floor and stomped on them. He didn't stop until they were plastic splinters. The only sound was that of the turtle scratching somewhere in the room. The gunnery slots framed the boys' dumb-struck faces. Russell was the first to speak. "Get out of my house." "Yeah," sneered Piper. "Out of here." Maniac went upstairs, got his satchel, and was gone. That night and the next night he slept at the park. The following day, as he sat reading in the library, in came the McNabb boys. They rushed to him. "Hey, Maniac," blurted Piper. "We've been looking all over for you. You gotta come to my birthday party. I'm having a party tomorrow. What you say, huh? You coming, huh?" Maniac couldn't believe it. The ugly feelings of the other day showed nowhere on their excited faces. "Come on, Maniac, you gotta!" And just like that, as he stared at them, the idea came. An idea as zany as they were. The words seemed to lift right off their faces like sunburnt skin peeling. "Well, okay," he said. On one condition. What's that? If I can bring somebody with me. Sure, bring everybody! We're gonna party! The librarian edged closer to the phone. Chapter 41. The McNabb boys didn't know whom they did expect Maniac to bring to the party, but for one thing sure, they did not expect him to come walking through the door with a black kid. And that was only half of it. From the way the kid swaggered in, from the candy bar that jutted like a chocolate stogie from the corner of his mouth, from the ripped stone, evil scowl on his face, the kid had to be none other than Mars Bar Thompson himself. If black meant bad, if black meant in-your-face nastiness, if black meant as far from white as you could get, then Mars Bar Thompson was the blackest of black. Here, in the middle of their living room, stopping the party, the neighborhood kids, the Cobras, even George McNabb, stopping them dead as traffic, just walked in through the front door, the steel door, breezed right on in, past the bars, standing there, I own this joint, there, before they knew what was happening, before anyone could reach for anything. Which, of course, is just what Maniac had in mind, remembering how little Grayson had known about black people and black homes, thinking of the McNabbs' wrong-headed notions, thinking of Mars Bar's knee-jerk reaction to anyone wearing a white skin, and thinking, naturally, what else would you expect? Whites never go inside blacks' homes, much less inside their thoughts and feelings, and blacks are just as ignorant as of whites. What white kid could hate blacks after spending 5 minutes in the Beals' house? And what black kid could hate whites after answering Mrs. Pickwell's dinner whistle? But the East Enders stayed in the East, and the West Enders in the West. And the less they knew about each other, the more they invented. It hadn't been easy, finding Mars Bar taking all his lip about cheating on the race, taking some bumps and some shoves. Mars goading him to fight, but keeping his own cool, matching Mars Bar glare for glare, telling him he wasn't as bad as he thought he was, really stroking him now, making him slam his candy bar to the ground. No? You want to tell me why I ain't so bad, fish? Go ahead, for I waste you, chest to chest. Keeping cool, letting Mars do all the huffing? Simple. You don't cross Hector. You stay over here where it's safe. How bad would you be over there? Stepping back then, folding his arms, smugging it up just enough, standing there in his white skin, gazing nonchalantly about 6 blocks deep in the heart of the black side. Guess that makes me badder than you. They did not go straight to the McNabbs. First, they went to the Pickwells. Maniac wanted Mars Bar to see the best that the West End had to offer. The little Pickwells made as much fuss over Mars Bar as over Maniac. They believed, as did all little kids in the West End, that he carried 100 Mars Bars with him at all times. Not surprisingly, Mrs. Pickwell never batted an eye when she saw who was coming to dinner. It was quite a sight, all right. 16 Pickwells plus Maniac plus a down-and-out golf caddy, 18 so-called white faces, and Mars Bar Thompson. To his credit, Mars Bar didn't use the words fishbelling or hunky once, though on one occasion he did bend the truth a mite. When a Pickwell kid asked him if it was true about the famous race in April, did Maniac really beat him going backwards? Mars Bar cited his fork for a minute and said, "Yeah, he went backward. But you got the story wrong. Wasn't me he beat. It was my brother, Milky Way." The little kids couldn't understand why the grown-ups laughed for 5 minutes after that. As for Mars Bar himself, his expression never changed until the dinner was almost over, when the littlest non-baby Pickwell, Dolly, called him Mr. Bar. And even then, it wasn't so much a smile as a crack in the glare. Even if Mars wasn't letting on, Maniac could tell he was pleased to learn his fame had spread to the West. When they left, half the Pickwell kids followed them, begging Mars to perform his legendary feat of stopping traffic. "Don't Maniac warned it might not work over here. But the Pickwells persisted, and when they reached Marshall Street, Mars Bar commanded stay here, and stepped into the traffic. Not only did he shamble, jive, shuck, and hip-doodle at his own sweet pace, he did something he had never done in the East End. He came to a complete and utter halt halfway across and let nothing but the evil in his eye take care of the rest. He stood like that for 1 full minute. By the time he finally moved onto the far side, so the legend goes, 23 cars, several bicycles, and a bus were stacked to a dead stop in both directions. Maniac hurried across while the Pickwells stood at the curb cheering and waving goodbye. But no one was cheering in Fort McNabb, and Maniac knew that despite the swagger and the scowl and the chocolate stogie, Mars Bar's Thompson was one uneasy dude. Kiyaya and I hope you enjoyed chapters 39 through 41 of Maniac Magee. We'll be back next week where we will be concluding Maniac Tuesdays. Stay safe and healthy, and remember, reading is power. We'll be back tomorrow for another episode of Let's Get Cozy, because it's story time with Kiyaya and Daniel.